Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. A big welcome to everyone. My name is Laura and I am delighted that you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I am joined by Stephen Razel, who will talk to you guys about which visuals you can use in connection with SVG and how to use DAX to maintain dynamic SVGs. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is @ESPC_community and our hashtag is #ESPC. Tweet us, at us and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, Generative AI in your company. Use Azure OpenAI with your own data, with Alexander Wachtel. This webinar takes place on Monday, January 15th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. CET. and is part of our new content week, Azure AI Week. For more information on this webinar, check out sharepointeurope.com/Azure AI Week. Learn all about Azure AI with our upcoming content week full of Azure AI content. Get ready for a week of innovation and learning as we dive into the dynamic world of Azure AI. ESPC is thrilled to invite you to our online content week where experts will share the latest advancements, strategies and breakthroughs in Azure AI. This content week takes place next week from Monday the 15th of January until Friday the 19th of January. So don't miss out. Join us for 4 Azure AI webinars on topics such as generative AI, Azure OpenAI, prompt engineering and more. You can register for these events at sharepointeurope.com/Azure AI Week. Elevate your Power Platform work ethic and supercharge your savings. You can save a whopping €500 on the European Power Platform Conference 2024 tickets, but do hurry as this offer is only valid for some time. So after the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any question you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Centre where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Stephen. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. So I think we can already start, if you can agree.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Cool. So I will just try to grab a screen. Please just confirm that you're able to see.
Yeah, that looks good.
Awesome. So once again, welcome everyone to my today's session. My name is Stepan Rešel, but you can call me Steve. I think it will be much more easier for mostly everyone. Before we will actually jump to our topic, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I'm from small country called Czech Republic in the middle of Europe, and I'm from a company called Data Brothers, where I currently work as a lead technical consultant, and I'm one of the Microsoft most valuable professionals on a data platform, especially focused on a Power BI and a Fabric currently. I have English blog, which is called Data Meerkat, where you can find lots of more information that I will be also talking about today, but even some other topics around the Fabric and the Power BI can be found there. And also you can find here my QR codes for the LinkedIn and the Twitter. So don't hesitate and reach me there. I would like to stay in touch after the session. But we're here because of the topic, so let's jump directly into the agenda. I have for you 3 basic points. First is what's actually the SVG, then which elements and attributes it uses, because it's a main pillar when you would like to start using the SVG to understand what's the what are your possibilities and what you can actually do inside. And then you'll finally go into the cooperation between the SVGs and the Power BI to be able to understand how and where we can actually use them, if there are some different types of them that we can actually use. And the last point that is just not visible right now is the one how to try to create some of them. So that's our agenda for today. So let's start with the first main point, which is the introduction of SVGs itself and what's actually the SVG, because it's something new. No, actually, no. SVG as a scalable vector graphic is here for quite a long time, and it's heavily used around, especially in case of the web development and even for some graphics and when you're printing your stuff. So SVGs is actually nothing new, but for us, in case of a Power BI, it gained much more popularity by the last year, I would say. Okay, kind of the last 1.25 of a year, because some changes that appeared inside the Power BI. In case of SVG, it's good to know that it's actually the markup language that help us to create a 2D vectors for the graphics, and it's all defined in a similar syntax to XML. And based on our setup in case of the markup language, the shapes will be rendered when we ask for that. So the system needs to recreate our image every single time when we ask for, but there's some huge benefits, like it's extremely scalable because these are just vectors. It can be expanded and decreased as much as possible. So you're not stuck to raster graphic. It's more variable, and also because of that, it's much more easier to generate them by a code or some generators. So like today, I will be showing you how to actually generate the SVG by the DEX directly inside the Power BI. And as I said, they are nothing new, so they are quite widely supported by lots of devices. I would say even by every device, because even if you're using the Windows, the Edge default browser is fully capable to render the SVGs, because using the SVGs in HTML code is extremely common. It's good to say that SVGs are extremely variable and can be used for quite a lot of purposes, like for the logos, which is extremely common to use them for when you would like to be able to make them bigger and smaller, mostly anytime when you need, but also for the icons in any app. Besides that, if you will combine more parts of shape that you would like to create, you can start creating some cards. And this is actually the first example that I'm showing you from the Power BI. This is just a card generated fully by SVG, so you can generate mostly anything that you would like, even the charts. Because at the end of the day, the SVG is just set up of some rectangles, some lines, some dots that you can combine to make look like as exactly as you would like to. And in that case, it's just up to you how you will use them or how you will generate them. So at the end, it can be logo, it can be icon, it can be card, it can be chart, and I would say anything where your imagination will go. So I will be showing you some examples of the SVGs or even their implementation inside the Power BI. And at the end, it will be just on you to start thinking about how they can actually help you to elevate your current reports. But before we will even go to these examples, it would be also great to find out how or where we can start creating our SVGs when we are starting with that. And for that, would be quite great to find out that we have here quite a lot of SVG editors, and a lot of them are completely free, like the Inkscape or the Vectorinator or on the Mac. On the other hand, there are some that are not free, like Adobe Illustrator. So I would say everyone at the end will use the tool that they will like, and yeah, everyone will use the tool that they like. For me personally, I don't prefer using the SVG editors, because quite often when you use the SVG editor, they create your shapes not exactly as you would expect it. So I can create very simple line, and from my perspective, I would create it as a polyline because it will be very easy element to use for that. But quite often it will be recreated to path, and path, when you're starting with SVGs, can be quite complicated to understand the syntax of that. So for that, I've switched completely to creating my own SVG only by the text editors. And I'm not talking exactly about the notepads or PS Pad, but mostly about the VS Code, because VS Code have some extension that can extremely help you with that, even to be able to directly see what you're creating. But I will be talking about that after a few slides, because I have here a short comparison between the SVG editors and the text editors. In case of a SVG editor, quite often, okay, in 99% of the time, the UI will be more friendly than in any text editor, because in any SVG editor, you can just grab what you would like to. So it can be a rectangle, it can be a circle, whatever, drop it into the canvas, set up it as you would like, and that's the end. That's completely nice. And that's perfect for the purpose when I would like to create something extremely quickly. Even because of this, it will support your creativity, because you can grab anything, put it into the canvas, and it will be there. In that case, of course, you don't need to know the elements that are used directly in that SVG that you're generating. But that's also the minus, because quite often, to be able to fully utilize the capabilities of SVGs, you would like to need what elements are used and the structures that are used for create some element, or even to create some larger group. And at the end, when you export the SVG from these editors, it can be extremely difficult to identify the positioning system that was used, or even how everything was combined together. On the other hand, if you will create it from scratch by the text editor, it's completely under your control. So you can do anything that you would like to. In that case, it's just up to you how you will be writing that. So every time you can use a similar way to create or recreate some problem. The solution at the end will be much simpler, and I would stick to the rule that fewer is better, because if you would be using some large elements or elements that can be fancy, and you will be combining lots of elements together, it can get fancy, it can get nice, but at the end we would like to use the SVG to generate the answers in our reports, not to grab the attention from parts where it should be. So try to have it in your mind that everything that when we are creating something, it should be there to support our users, not to grab their attention from something much more valuable. Of course, in case of a text editors, you have absolute control over elements, and it's just up to you what you will do with them. Yeah, it will require some skills, and when you're starting with SVGs, there will be lots of fails, and you will need to start thinking about all possible scenarios. What will happen if some value in my chart will go down? Should I reposition the baseline and other stuff? But at the end, it will help you to start thinking about your charts much more skeptic way, and you will start thinking about, okay, how to really deliver the message to the end user in as small steps as possible, which is actually the benefit. As I said, in case of a SVG editor, it can look slightly unreadable quite often, because as you can see on the left side, I have here very easy line. Okay, one line with two axes with no description currently. And on the right side, you're able to see the code that was actually generated by one of that SVG editors. And from my perspective, this can be optimized, and it can be optimized to be much more readable. Like I have here the axes, and axes are completely the same. So why not to grab the fill, the opacity, the stroke, stroke line cap, stroke line jointer, stroke width, and elevate that into the G, which G stands here for the group. So I will not need to define it for every single element. It will be defined just once. And to be honest, I would not use the path to create just these two lines, because here's some element, it's called line, and in that case it will be much more easier to read. So from one point to second point, that's the end. No, in this way not. So that's exactly what I was talking about. It's quite detective work after to decompose how that SVG editor actually create even some extremely easy charts or elements like this. I told you that my preferred way how to actually create the SVGs is inside the VS Code. And for that, I'm using one specific extension, which is called SVG. Why? Because this exact extension inside the VS Code will grab the whole library of SVG components, bring that to your VS Code, so IntelliSense will know about all possible elements that you might need, and also it will create the SVG preview, and the preview is here for the real time, so I can start writing my code, and next to that I'm able to see how everything is generated, and I can set up the background, I can set a zoom, I can even measure the pixels and be able to recalculate everything extremely quickly. So that's why I actually use the VS Code, and even I can format my code here, do some quick replacements, and when I grab my code, put it into the Power BI, recreate it into the DAX, and something will fail, and when you will be starting with SVG, you will be able to see the fails quite often. There's nothing easier than extract the code from a Power BI that was generated inside the visual by DAX queries, drop it back to the VS Code, hit the format, and this extension is capable to find the error inside your generated code. So you can very easily find where the issue was, and just to fix that, return to DAX code, fix it here, and done. You have everything that you needed. So that's my perspective how I look on creating the SVGs. VS Code is the way. In case of elements and attributes, there are some basic elements that I would recommend you to find out and learn about them, how to use them, because they are the main starters that you will actually need. First of them is actually the SVG. which is a container that defines the coordinate system for all other elements that you will be using. Then you have here the G, which is just a group. For you, it can be the grouping element that will contains more how to call it? Yeah, that will contains more attributes for one specific sub-elements. Then you have here a text, the T-span, which defines the subtext inside the text, so you can redefine the parts of text. So you have a text and some part will be bold, some will be italic, some will have completely different size, etc. And even the colors. Then direct for creating the rectangles, circle, ellipse, line, polyline, and of course the path. Because I've told you that in case of a path, when you're starting, it can be much more trickier and it will not be easy actually to be able to fully understand how path works. But when you get into the path, you will find out that basically by path you can create absolutely anything. Absolutely. Path is the generic element to define any shape you want to. And in case of attributes, it's great to say that every single element have different attributes, but a lot of attributes are actually similar, like fill. Fill attribute actually defines the color that's used to paint the element, and it can be used to define a color of a text or the filament of the rectangle, the color of the line, etc. Then you have a fill opacity, the stroke width, the font family. Yeah, you can even define a sub-font family if someone will not have the main font family. So like if they would not have the Arial, so it can drop to Segway Y or the Helvetica, whatever. You can define the font size and the font weight or the radius of the axis. Like in case of a rectangle, I would like to have my corners under some radius. So by Rx or Ru, you can define these radiuses for the corners. Because would be great to have some ability to find more interesting stuff about the element attributes. I've dropped you here the QR codes. So there's the link for developer.mozilla.org, where Mozilla prepared extremely valuable library for all possibilities with the SVGs, and lots of them has even the examples, so you can just go there, check that, and try it for your own. Then here's a V3 school and V3 org, where you can find a lot of basic information that you will need or that will help you to that will help you to fully understand the SVGs. But let's go to the Power BI cooperation with the SVG, because in case of Power BI and SVGs, we need to understand that there are two different implementations of them that we can actually use: the static one and the dynamic one. The static one means that we grabbed our SVG and we've loaded it directly into the visual, like into a visual card or into image visual. We can also have a static SVGs deployed into our models directly by Power Query, because we can have our SVGs in the folders. We can load them by Power Query directly into our model, and then we can just show them in a table, in the matrix. But on the other hand, we have also the dynamic ones. And the dynamic SVGs means that there are some specific visuals that are capable to fully render our SVGs based on our measures. So the measure in Power BI can create the SVG or just make changes inside of that and deploy that to visual where it will be rendered. So if we look on a visual that are actually capable to run the dynamic SVGs, we will find out that we have actually just 3 of them. We have a table, we have a matrix, and we have a card, the new card visual to be specific. And these 3 visuals are our main points where we can actually use our dynamic SVGs, and these visuals are the main pillar for us to make our report much more readable and much quicker generating the answers for our end users. If I will look on that from perspective of table and a matrix, it's great to understand that for them, they are here, the SVGs are there to expand the visual context and actually to generate the further answers, because we can deploy our SVGs directly as another column of a table or the matrix, and they can even propagate into the totals. And in that case, we can have a column that will be answering in nominal, in percentages, in other text, and then the SVGs that will try to explain a little bit more. That's in case of a tables and a matrices, because we can actually be generating anything. If we would have some list of documents, we can even have some text generated in SVG that will be showing, hey, it's a PDF, it's a Word, it's a PPTX, it's a SharePoint, whatever. And it's just up to us how we would like to show that. In case of a new card visual, it's much more variable, because in that case, we can actually deploy and show absolutely perfectly anything. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, I'm not kidding. All these small visuals are generated directly by the DEX based on our data. So we have here the card that's telling us the total target is something, and we are missing some value, and also with a mini chart that is capable to start answering the questions if some month was over the target or not. So we can directly see that 3 were not, or that 3 were under the target and 3 actually hit that. We are able to generate these pie charts, waffle charts, some percentage ratio with a claim acceptance, and even the cards with some more complicated structures. And that's quite a huge potential in case of a new card visual, that we can actually generate literally anything. But how to start with that? Because I can just grab SVG, drop it into the measure as a text, and it will render that? No, it's not that easy, but still it's easy. Because to be able to render that, we actually need that SVG code, but we also need some declaration for Power BI to understand that the code that we are giving is actually the SVG. So here you can find some head start, so the template that you can directly use. Whereas predefine the SVG declaration, the header, and the end. And in case of calculation, you can just prepare your part and combine it together to start generating the SVG that you need. The link here or the QR code will send you to my website called the Data Meerkat, to a templates where you can find a lot of templates for SVGs, and also this template to start creating it. But I think in this moment we said quite a lot about the theory, and will be great to go into the Power BI and start creating something. So let's jump directly to the showcase. And before that, let me a sip of water. Okay. So I'm inside the Power BI, and inside the file, this is actually called SVG ready, where I have some amount of my SVGs, like the dashed scored line that we were able to see. So it was not fake, it's really generated here. And if I will try a tooltip, you will be able to see that it's really just an SVG that is generated based on some data. I have here some column chart, so I can even try to manipulate with that. And as you can see, everything is recalculated to be able to show everything that we need, even the highlights of the highest and the lowest performance, despite the chart with ability to recreate. And also, as you can see, all these visuals are rendering extremely fast because we're using a native visuals just with some text code, and actually to be able to generate these text is not hard for Power BI to render that. Then I have here also that KPI, and I'm not showing it just inside the visual card, but also in a matrix to demonstrate you that actually I can grab any of my text generator for SVG, deploy it in all of these visuals, and it will be rendered. Okay, metrics and the tables are using slightly different approach to sizing the SVGs than the visual card, but still it's completely fine. So it can be fully reusable, and I can select any different product, and everything will be directly recalculated. Of course, the connect line that I was showing you, so why not just compare the May and the June by a slope chart, which is extremely common in case of data storytelling. The SVGs have an ability even to be animated. So as you can see, the visual is actually animated based on some of my selection, which is something that you don't want to actually do quite often. But when you would like to make an impression, it's great to know that there are some possibilities for that. And much more, like a progress bar, the waffle chart, even a waterfall can be fully recreated inside the SVGs, and it can be completely dynamic, as I said. So everything is under my control, everything is generating by my code, and I know how it will behave. And sometimes you also need to have really some strange implementations, so like generating a dynamic floors of a building and selecting some floors of that. But let's create something. In this moment, we have here our matrix with the products and sold quantity. So let's create some basic SVG that will actually help us to understand what we're able to see inside. Like, we would like to have a comparison or the bar chart of how many percentage were actually sold of this product. And let's say there was some target for them. So I would like to start. And for that, I would need my template. So I will just grab that, go to the Power BI, and hey, I would like to create a new measure. So I will wait for a moment. Yep, and I can start creating it. So it will be SVG products overview and the template. And in case of a template, I'm able to see that there's some calculated part of the SVG that I need to change. And to change that, I need to predefine something that I would like to be showing. So let's say that I would like to show the progress bar with another part of the bar where the first part of the bar will be the percentage of the total. So if I would try to if I would like to have something that will help me to align that, I can show this as a percent of a grand total. So I will be able to see that the motherboard C will be some 27%. That's something I would like to see, at least for the moment. So we need to start with some rectangle that will be there for us to generate our partial of a code. So let's start and create the first bar, which will be the rect, which is called for rectangle, and it will be from the x. No, come on. Yep, from the x, where x means the position from the left, so it will be from the beginning, and the u, where let's say that it will be from the 5. We will have at least some ability to have a padding between the top part of our row. Then we will need some width that will help us to say from the start to the end of a row where it will goes. So the width will be like a 50, now just a static ones, and the height will be like 50, why not? And we will fill that by some color like A14E3F. So this can be defined by the hex code, the RGB code, or even by the names itself of a color. So we can just drop the red or green or something else and it will work. I will replace the part of a code that was highlighted that it's not working, and I will drop my SVG into the matrix. And directly what will happen, I will be able to I will be able to see that the SVG is actually just text. So let's change the data category to image URL. And directly after changing to image URL, everything was recreated. Our bar or our rectangle was currently created as a square because we said that it's a 50-50. So let's change it from 50 to 100. And right now it starts progressing. We still can see that the bar is quite large, or the cell itself in the matrix is quite huge. And it's because of few things. We have here the view box inside the definition. The view box help us to have the control of how things inside SVG can be sized. So we have a size from 0, to 100. So let's change it to 160. Nothing will change now. And why is that so? Is that because inside the definition of our matrix, we have the height, which is set, it's 70. So let's do it at 60. Already changed. And the width, that it's also 60 right now. So let's drop here to 100. And in that case, you can see that right now we've repositioned the full SVG that we had based on the definition inside the settings of our visual. And if we would change that, so height will be like a 30, which will look much more cleaner. And you know what? Even a 20 will be completely fine. But in that case, you have a 20 and 100, and our bar is somewhere in the middle. Why is that so? It's because it's recalculating the inner view box to this percentage. So I need to rebuild my view box to have a same setup as I have here in the visualization. Right now, I have the 100 and the 20, and I have a height 50. But I said that I would like to have some padding, like I'm starting from a 5. So let's recreate it to a 10. So we will have a 5 and 5 pixels up and down. And right now it looks much better. Our progress bar is currently in the middle of our row. Right now it has some red color, which doesn't matter, still it's fine. But right now would be great to change the size of our bars based on total percentages. So let's grab the calculation part again and start calculate. So it will be current value, which will be the total quantity, and we will also need the total. So total value, which will be calculate the total quantity, and let's remove filters from the product name. Right now nothing will actually happen, but we will calculate the divide from that. So let's grab a div, which will be divide, and it will be the current value divided by the total. And right now we have some partial, and our main width is 100, so let's multiply it by 100 and change the width, and yep, here inside. And as you can see, our bars directly recalculated based on the percentages that we have here, that we have against our grand total. It was extremely easy. We're actually granted nothing special right now, but it's already starting giving us the answers, or at least the support for our values to be able to fully understand the proportions. If you would like to make it a little bit nicer, and let's call it like the progress bar, which I will also redeploy here, then we will have the rest bar, which will be again the rect. And you know what? I will just grab it completely. And it will be from a 0, or it should be from a 0, but right now I can directly use my div, not to be starting from so the next bar will not be starting from a 0, but from the end of a previous bar, and it should be ending on the end. So we should be able to see the progress. So var will be complete and x position. So it will be 100 minus div, and we will just rechange that and change the filament. So it can be like E6, 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 and let's start rendering also the rest bar. And yes, right now we have the full bar from the start to the end, and we're creating the part or the initial part of our bar, then the rest bar, the rest part, so we're able to see inside how much in a proportion it actually means that we've solved the IoT sensor C in 22 percentages. And it will be directly recalculable, because if I will use something like month for our filters, you're able to see that everything is changing based on our selections. If I will also add the filter on the employee, I can see that under a club in a month from for month to 6 month wasn't even be selling the IoT sensor C, but in a 55%, it was selling the motherboard C. And this was just a showcase how quickly you can create some basic SVGs. And it can be even showing much more, because we can add some targets like, hey, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different products. Let's say that we would like to be selling them quite equally, so it will be great if every of them will be selling more than 11 percentages. So let's add some another part that will be actually the line. So I will just start it. It will be 11%, 11 percentage. So I will need X position of line, should be just the 11. I will drop here the target line, and as I said, I can directly use line, which will also help me to use that. Also, it would be great to say that you don't need to be specify the ending element every time. You can even be just using the slash on the end of a rectangle if you're not using the any definition inside. So you can even specify it like this to have a little bit less text or a little bit less charts. But let's start with the line. Line is actually defining the x1, x2, u1, u2 to find out the positions. So it will be position of a line. And yeah, I missed the connection. Okay, x1, x2 will be actually the same, and then we need to define the u and u2, and for them we have here some padding, so we can use that, and we right now can be starting even from that 0 and ending at the 20. Right now the fill or the stroke color of that will be black, so let's just add it. So the target line, okay, now it will even, oh yeah, but the stroke is actually the 0. So stroke, and first I will add the color, which color can be again completely anything, but let's use 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, which will stands for a black, and I will need a stroke width, which will be like 1.5. And as you can see, our line for 11 percentages has been deployed. If we would like to make it smaller, I can just redefine the width to not be 1.5 but just a 1 to exactly have it on a point where I need it. And based on these quick adjustments, I can deploy anything that I want to. If I would have a specific target for a specific employee to be able to selling some products, I can be even modifying the exposition for every single product to be on a different percentages to show directly if I hit the target or not. And if yes, I can stop there my progress bar and add another bar that will be showing the uplifted percentages. And I think in this moment, the showcase of some possibilities of SVGs that you can actually create was enough. So if you have any questions right now, you can start be sending them to me and I will be here to answer your question. We have just 10 minutes for that, so don't hesitate. And if there would not be any questions, I would also like to, oh, come on. Thank you for the attention. You can here find the QR codes for my LinkedIn and Twitter. And I hope you've learned something new today.
Thank you, Steve, for a great presentation. So we'll just get into the questions and answers part now. So as we've already said, if you want to ask a question, please feel free to type it into the questions window now. So there's just one question in here and someone wants to know, are there any limitations or considerations we should be aware of when using SVGs in Power BI visuals?
Yeah, not every visual is capable to use the SVGs. That's the first thing to have in mind. Then you're limited. If you are creating the SVGs inside the measure, you're limited to storage space that you can store into the string. So if you will be generating the large SVGs, you are not able to combine the variables together to get the answer. In that case, it's much better to create the temp table inside the measure and by concatenate x combine the part together, because in that case you're overstepping the limit for the charts that you can actually have in the string. And there's one more limitation that I need to mention, and that's the SVGs in a Power BI doesn't exactly support all capabilities of SVGs that you can know from any other systems. It's like the ability to use the pseudo elements or like on a click, on hover, etc. These are not currently supported inside the Power BI, and it's because of its implementation. The SVGs are rendered slightly like behind of some wall, so you're not able to click directly on SVG on either hover it, because there's some layer before them.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for answering that question. So there's just one more question then, and someone is wondering, are there any plans or trends in Power BI development that indicate broader support for SVGs in the future?
Definitely, because the new visual card appeared last year. Since that, the production group was quite heavily listening the community on X or the LinkedIn, that people start using that extremely heavily. And when they deployed the new visual, the slicer, people start complaining that, hey, this new slicer visual supports images, but it's not supporting the SVGs. Why is that so? And because of this, we've seen on the X the response from the Miguel Angles, that Miguel Myers, that he will grab this question to his engineers to find out if there's something what they can do with that to give us the opportunity to use the SVGs even in new slicer visual. So yep, seems like their focus on gave us the ability to actually do what we would like to is there.
Brilliant. So just one more question, just two quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So someone is wondering, they're saying, I am using OKVIS's Synoptic Designer to display a floor plan of an office. The SVG is complex. I want to visually change some of the lines that define the rooms. What tool would you recommend for this?
In that case, open that SVG in some SVG editor and change it inside of that. In that case, would be much more easier to open it in like Illustrator, Inkscape, whatever. Grab the line, reposition that, export it. That's all. That would be the easiest option how to do that.
Brilliant. And then one last question. So someone is asking, aside from Power BI, where else is SVG supported? Can a dynamic generated SVG be used in an email body, and can it be used in Power Apps?
Actually, SVGs can be used in Power Apps and even dynamically generated. You just need to know how. And it's quite similar to this approach where you need to define the exact structure, but you can use them. You can even use them in adaptive cards to be directly sending the SVGs inside of the card to a Teams chat. So I would say SVGs can be used mostly anywhere. And I would, of course, if you open mostly any website on the internet, they will have here the SVGs.
Brilliant. So that is all the questions that we have in there today. So just on behalf of the ESPC community, I just want to extend a big thank you again to you, Stefan, for taking the time to carry out this webinar today. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope that you've enjoyed my session. Thank you so much.
Great. So that is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Take care, and I hope that you'll join us again soon. Bye for now.
See ya.